this beautiful platform. That's me. It looks good. So, and now we're actually going over the what's new in Adobe Analytics part. So this is something we're just doing every quarter. So if you if you don't follow the Adobe Analytics and Customer Journey Analytics release notes as closely as I am, then this is a good opportunity for you to just catch up on what's new and get some of the news from the product. So this is what we've shown at the last quarterly meeting. So those are actually old release notes. But we this year already got the folders in Analysis Workspace to organize our projects. We got auto saving for new projects, so we don't lose our work if we just start working on a project in Analysis Workspace and then by accident close the browser before we can ever save. So that's some cool new features. We now have enhanced user preferences. So if in a freeform table you always want to have unique visitors instead of like occurrences as your default metric, like that's some setting that I actually set, then you can just do that now, which is pretty cool. The calendar updates also quite a big update in Analysis Workspace. We can now because now we can say that the calendar should actually be like relative to what we select in the freeform panel. So, for example, if we select this month as a date range, then we could set today to the first day of that month, and like whatever we change the calendar to, it would then also respect those changes. So something like a year-over-year comparison can get very, very quick with that, and that's something that people have been asking for quite some time. Then we also have data dictionary in Analysis Workspace, where we can add some descriptions and also tell people how to use components and what to use them with. So that's pretty cool as well. We got data stories in mobile dashboards. It's also very cool because we can basically create some slideshows now in the mobile dashboards app. So that's pretty neat as well if you're using that. And now we also have link sharing for projects without a login. So if you enable that for your company, people can now share Analysis Workspace projects without people having to log in to view them. You can also restrict that, so they need to log in, but don't need to have access to that particular workspace. But that's a very cool feature. And now, like when we last covered it, it was just in closed beta. Now it's generally available, and that's since June 7. So let's now go over the actual news, and I'm also going to do a little live demo because I was like, it's cool to talk about them, but why not show them live, because some would be rather tedious to show on slides. So to cover the first one, that's something that has been missing from the new Web SDK. So that's also known as Alloy, like if you've been around a while in the Web SDK space. Something that was missing for quite some time was support for Activity Map, and now that's partially supported. It works quite a bit different from how it works with app measurement, because with Web SDK, it actually increases your server calls, because it actually sends new events to Adobe Analytics, whereas in the app measurement version, it would always kind of hijack like whatever call goes out next, and it would not increase your server calls. At least it's there now, and it's working, so that's pretty cool. But I do still wish that we would kind of rebuild the old functionality there, because yeah, it was quite cool how it worked in app measurement. Then for classification sets, we also got some cool new features, because now we have some more options to manage them across the report suites. We can now name them better, and we can also connect them through what is now called automations, not only to a FTP server, which we could do before, but we can also connect it to like Azure or like S3 or like even Google Cloud Platform, I think. So if we want to pull our classification sets from those sources, we can also do that now, which is cool. Then we have a new configuration variable in app measurement. It's called double encode link parameters. And actually the functionality was there for a long time, but now we have the option to turn it off through that configuration. So what it does, like in general, is when you track links through app measurement, by default, it would always double encode the link name that was used. And that can give you some problems if you have, for example, non-UTF-8, so like 2-byte characters in your website, and it's trying to encode this. So if you ever run into encoding issues with like your app measurement links and like your link names, you can now turn that feature off. By default, it's still on, so it's actually nothing new. But if you're one of those people who ran into that problem, you're going to be very happy about that. Then for data feeds, we have some new destinations. So in the past, we also had some destinations in there, like FTP server most prominently, but now we also have some more. So for example, S3, some Azure, and also some Google Cloud Storage or Google Cloud Platform destinations. So that's also very cool if you want to push it into those clouds as well. And then I'm actually going to hop over to my browser now, if I can find it. So you should now see, and there's this Workspace to actually go through the new released features in Workspace, because most notably in the report section, we now under audience have the new bots reports. And that's pretty cool because previously bot reports were only available in the old reports and analytics section of Adobe Analytics. That's now retired towards the end of the year, so we need something new. And Adobe has delivered. So you can see we now have bot page views and like bot pages, bot names, and all the things we had in reports analytics also in the Analysis Workspace. There's just a limited amount of history there. I think it only goes back to like March or something. So it's not for the full time. And it's actually using, I think it's actually using data sources internally. So I think how they made that work is by just exporting data from reports and analytics and pushing it into Workspace now through data sources. So you can't use those metrics and dimensions with like every other metric and dimension, like how, for example, also AMO works if you're using that. But it's pretty cool because you can now just use this report or also use the metrics and dimensions you see in here to build your own reports and actually monitor how your bots are doing on your page and what they're looking at and how often they come back to you. So that's a long requested feature and I'm very happy that it's here. Now, if I go out of this and create a new project, I can actually show you the next feature, which is delete rows containing dynamic dimensions from a freeform table. So that sounds very convoluted. What we could always do in the past, so for example, if I select those items from this in this dimension here, you can see that I now have, as expected, the items in my table. And here I can now remove those items because I added them manually. Before the release, it was not possible to do that with just any dimension. So what's now new is if I drag the full dimension in here, I can now also delete those items here, which makes it quite a bunch, quite a lot easier for business users to just remove everything they don't want from those tables. And what it's doing behind the scenes, you can see in the filter sections, it now added those items here. So it's just a very, very quick and easy way to just exclude those items if we don't want to see them in our reports. And once I remove them here and apply, they're back. So it's non-destructive. It's something everyone can do. It's a pretty cool and fast way. I don't even know. Can I remove multiple? Let's see. Looks like I can. No, only edit one. Well, maybe something for the future. But yeah, that's this feature and it's working pretty cool and pretty nicely. Then we have a new button to add a visualization within a panel. So if I scroll down here, you can see in the past, we always had this button down here to add a new panel. So here it is now, and we now have another one of those buttons in here to add a new visualization. So I can't count how often I already misclicked when I actually wanted to click this button and then click this one. So maybe there's some UX improvement still to be done. But from this button, we can now add more visualizations just to this panel, and that's also pretty cool if you just want to build out your analysis. So what else? We can now create deep links for the mobile app. There's no way for me to demo that in any sensible way, but you can now link to a specific page directly in the mobile dashboards app, which is pretty cool. And then to my personal favorite feature. Previously, we could already do something like this. When I'm going into my pages here, I can just select a bunch of them, drag them over here, and when I now hold Shift once I drop this, you can see that it's now creating a drop-down. So that's what we had before, and this is still working as it was. So let me delete this one again. What we can now also do is we can just drag and drop the full dimension over here, and then we just have the full thing as a, whoops, I need to hold down Shift. Then we just have the full thing as a drop down. And this is pretty cool because this now makes it very easy to just like add everything we like. And like this is something that users of Power BI or Tableau like have been asking for quite some time. Because if we, for example, use something like our mobile device type, I just drag that over here. You can then see that, for example, if I also add the mobile device, here it is. You can then see that once I, for example, select gaming consoles in here, that the other filters have now updated and everything I can see in those drop downs is now also specific to this one. If I want to reset it all, I can do that here. And whatever I do in here, so for example, if I go to the Xbox, you can see that the only available device type is now gaming console, and the only pages are the ones that have been viewed on Xboxes. So if you want to do that type of analysis, you can do. And this is actually pretty cool because we've been asking for this feature for a long time. And having this is now super, super helpful to just build some very flexible projects and something where we don't need to always update those drop downs and always add new items in there. Because, yeah, that was always a big pain for us. So very, very excited about this one. Like probably like my candidate for the best feature release of the year. But yeah, let's see what Adobe still has in store for us. So I just see a question in chat. Will the dimension filter add the new dimension items dynamically when new items are added, like new pages? Exactly. That's exactly what it's doing, because it's always relevant to the like relative to the panel. So, for example, if I select a different date range here, it would always only show values that have been tracked in that date range, and as new ones appear, they will also be added. So we don't need to manually like fiddle around with them anymore. Once we have the right filters and segments for the full panel, we can just leave this alone, and it's actually pretty cool. It's pretty amazing. So last thing then on my list here is sort components in Analysis Workspace. In the release notes, it's saying that the release date is to be defined, but it's still like already available. So in Analysis Workspace, by default, the components in this left rail are sorted by recommended, and that's a like machine learning personalization feature. So it's always using whatever you use like frequently. It will show at the top, and use that like to sort the list. You can now manually say that you want to sort it alphabetically. If you click it again, like without any visual indication, like it would be nice if this arrow like is now reversed or something. Like you can just sort it like in any order you would like, and also by category. And I don't really know what category is supposed to mean here, but you can see that, for example, like calculator metrics are on the top, then Adobe provided metrics. So like I think there's some logic behind that for like calculated or built in and like Adobe or custom. So yeah, like there's certainly something behind that. But yeah, like according to Adobe's own release notes, it shouldn't be available already, but it is like in all the companies I tested it with. So it's like it seemingly is out already. So then important Adobe Analytics changes. So we do have an update to the Net Acuity Carrier database. So if you're relying on the on the domain report, for example, to know which ISP your users are using, this is now also improved. Like those are already the old release notes. We now have a improved IP to geolocation mapping. Like you might have noticed already that your scheduled projects in Report Builder and also in Reports and Analytics have been paused because like that's on the way out. So makes sense to pause them now to actually alert you of something changing. We have an update to device lookups because now with kind hints and all those things, like it's now more important to like also respect those in device lookups. So it's also already available since quite some time, and we're already on the classification set architecture for quite some time, and we just got an update to that. And we also have some end of lives this year. So, for example, for the people metric, so for those people who were part of the device co-op, for example, that's now on the way out. It should already be deprecated at this point in time. Also, everything in relation to reports and analytics. So, for example, publishing lists or reports and analytics itself. And also the good old data workbench. So, if you've been one of the like 3 customers who use that tool, like you now also need to like probably buy customer journey analytics because it's pretty much the same but more powerful. So we have some new important Adobe Analytics changes. So something that we now can read in the release notes is that we are now going to face a 37-month expiration of purchase IDs and event IDs. So how that works right now is if you set a purchase ID with your purchase event, Adobe Analytics is going to remember that ID forever. They're never going to delete it. And if you ever send it again, it's not going to accept that order. It's not going to track it as a purchase because it's already seen that purchase ID. Now that's going to be limited to 37 months. So Adobe is trying to make their architecture a little bit more efficient there, I think. And same with event IDs. So if you, for example, have like any like registration events or like any other event that's bound to an ID that you're using for the application, just be aware that after 37 months, that will be treated as a new ID, even if it's already been tracked in the past. So if you're using data feeds and data warehouse from the London data center, you also need to, like if you're limiting the IP addresses that can connect to whatever destination it's going to connect to, you now also need to add, I think it's 2 new IP addresses or something to a firewall. So that's also just to let you know. If you're like one of the very few customers who is using the Japanese feature phone tracking service, so that's actually a Apache web server extension that Adobe provided to Japanese customers, that's also now like retired. So like if that affects you, and I'm very sorry, I'm not aware of any replacement, but that's also quite old. And if you're using API integrations with like any Adobe service, then you can also migrate to the OAuth server to server, like type of authentication, because in the past you only had to use the JWT, I think it's called, authentication. You always had to do those shenanigans with like exchanging certificates and always keeping them like updated and all that. And the server to server connection is now a little bit like easier on the admins because you're basically creating a pair of keys that you can use for connecting to the API, and then you can just update that and delete it if you ever need to. But yeah, it's a very much like the quality of life improvement if you need to work with the API, because it's going to make your life much more easy. Yeah, and that's all for the release notes for today. I'm going to stop the recording now. Stop recording the session.